Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, I'm Professor Gabriel Nascimento from the Federal University of Southern Bahia, Brazil. I'm here again, and I'd like to thank you from Abralin for the invitation. I'm glad to be here this afternoon again at Abralin ao Vivo with Professor DeGraff. Well, at a moment, we have this is a room. This opportunity is a room for Abralin and other associations all over the world to embrace Black Lives Matter real agenda and to welcome Black scholars to speak about the most diverse issues, not only about Black Lives Matter. Well, let me just introduce Abralin ao Vivo is an initiative hosted by Abralin, the Brazilian Association of Linguistics, in cooperation with many different associations in Brazil and all over the world, such as the Brazilian Association of Applied Linguistics in Brazil, the Permanent International Committee of Linguists, the CIPL, the Associations of Linguistics and Philology of Latin America, AUFAL, the Argentinian Society of Linguistic Studies, the Linguistic Societies of America, the Linguistic Society of Europe, and the Linguistics Association of Great Britain. Well, let me speak briefly about this event. This is designed to give students and researchers free access to the state-of-the-art discussions on the most diverse topics related to the study of human language. And we hope that you can join us. I received news about that Abralin. Abralin is free of charge to people who enter the universities through affirmative actions, and indigenous people from indigenous communities, for example. And after the talk, I'm gonna gather a lot of questions from the chat, from the audience, to deliver them to Professor DeGraff. So finally, let me just introduce Professor DeGraff, who's the professor of linguistics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and who's the director of the MIT-Haiti Initiative. He's also a founding member of the Haitian Creole Academy. He holds a PhD in linguistics from the University of Pennsylvania. Professor DeGraff has been advocating for the status of Creole as a full-fledged language. And what we could compare to with the status of Portuguese, for example, in Brazil, for example, the Afro-Portuguese language spoken in Brazil. And briefly, his fields of scholarship are linguistic theory, Creole studies, and the relationship among linguistics, ideology, education, human rights, and development. So this afternoon, he will give a talk entitled, Black Lives Will Not Matter Until a Language Also Matter, the politics of linguistics and education in post-colonies. As Franz Fanon did once, although translated to Portuguese, Professor DeGraff, here and alive, will speak one more time to white Brazilians who maintain Black people silent and underrepresented in linguistics. Professor DeGraff, thanks for accepting the invitation from Abralin, for being here this afternoon alive. And please speak at the moment. We need you to speak more and more.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. This is such a warm introduction. And I love the fact that you mentioned Frantz Fanon, who's been a major inspiration for my own work. I wish that I had learned about Fanon when I was a student, even back in Haiti, but I only started reading Fanon after I got my PhD. And by then it was not too late, but it was a bit late. So I'm glad that you mentioned Fanon, which is at the core of some of my inspiration for this work on linguistics and education. So I'm going to share my screen now, so I hope it's going to go well. Okay, so let's try that. Yes, looks like it's going to go well. So can you see my screen? Perfect. Okay, so I'll start by again thanking Abralin and thanking Miguel Oliveira for his patience in arranging this. And I want to thank the many collaborators of Abralin for making this series possible in the middle of this twin pandemic, COVID and racism. And I really think that this is a key moment in world history. And I think that it's very fitting that we get to speak about Black Lives Matter and language. But some background first. So the murder of George Floyd, I think we need to understand that is really the culmination of centuries of abuse, both through geopolitics and social class warfare. And I want to insist something which often is not mentioned, and even within the Black Lives Matter movement, I think there is too little reference to that, is the fact that language has played a crucial role both in the geopolitics of abuses on Black and Brown people, but also in the creation and transmission of inequality, as you mentioned, Gabrielle, in favor of the few, often the whites, and to the detriment of the many, mostly Black and Brown people, not just in the US, but all over the Americas, Africa, Asia, etc. That's why I feel that we linguists, we have an important role to play in the Black Lives Matter movement for social justice. And this is where my own work at MIT fits in. And I'm going to describe my work as a case study for a sort of decolonial movement, both in linguistics and education. But for us to play that role as linguists in this decolonial movement, I think we first need to understand the role that too many of our intellectual forebears and contemporaries, our linguist colleagues, we have to understand the role that we have played to date in supporting white supremacy. So this talk is basically about how we linguists and other educators can contribute for real, not just in statements, but for real to the global Black Lives Matter movement. So the talk will proceed along three dimensions: time, space, and across languages, and across disciplines. We'll get into some history, some geopolitics, and lots of linguistics and education. And I'm sorry if from time to time, it might appear as if I'm going in many directions at once. So it might sound to you as if I'm rambling, but I'm not. And also, I want to say right off the bat that this is a very personal issue for me. So as you'll see throughout the talk, these issues about white supremacy, about racism, about language and education, they've touched me personally from my childhood onward. So this will not be your typical academic talk where you keep distance with your topic. I'm going to be very engaged personally in these issues. So please bear with me. And if you feel that there's some chaos in my organization, bear with me, because I think that the logic will come through at the end, or hopefully before the end. So, but I want to start with a big shout out to all those around the globe in classrooms supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And I especially want to thank educators who are working every day on the front line of this racist pandemic, especially those teachers who teach children that Black Lives Matter. So this poster is one that a teacher, Tatiana Klein, shared on Facebook. So I was lucky to be able to find it on Facebook. And I was moved to see so many children in this classroom writing the words Black Lives Matter in their own languages, many languages. So it shows that in this particular classroom, and thank you, Tatiana, for allowing me to use these pictures, it shows that not only Black Lives Matter for these children, but also their own lives, their own languages matter as well. And this is a far cry from what you'll see in general culture. For example, if you take Disney cartoons, for example, many popular cartoons, through language, these cartoons show children not how to love Black lives, but in fact, it shows children, those cartoons show children how to hate others, even themselves. And here I want to thank my colleague, linguist, now writer, Rosina Lippi-Green, for, I thank you, Rosina, for your analysis of these Disney cartoons that teach children how to hate. And what Lippi-Green has carefully studied is how Disney movies, even something like The Princess and the Frog with Black characters, how these movies teach children to be anti-Black, anti-Semitic, anti-women, anti-queer. Basically, they teach children how to hate. So the point here, and this is the point that Rosina makes in the book about language and ideology, is that white supremacy starts early. So beware, parents. So in the spirit of Lippy Green, I will examine the role that language, especially the languages of racialized and minoritized people, the role that languages play from cradle to grave in the classrooms, in universities, and society at large, including the courts. And the role of language can be either for domination, but my hope is that it can also be for liberation, especially if we linguists, if we play our part. So this talk will require that we also look at the role that linguistics has played throughout history against Black lives. And so we need to understand, especially how production of knowledge about language is often used as a tool to create and transmit inequity against Black and brown lives. So that's a very important step. So we can better understand how we linguists can help create solutions that are sustainable vis-a-vis the Black Lives Matter movement beyond cliched statement. So throughout my talk, I'm also going to stress the global in the Black Lives Matter movement. And often Haiti will be an epicenter, sorry for the metaphor, but you'll clearly see why Haiti is important. But from this slide, you can also see that, and here I'm using words from Martin Luther King, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, from Palestine to the US to Haiti. And as MLK asks us, we must be cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities, of all struggles. Again, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And what you can see here on this slide is basically a very graphic parallel between what happened to George Floyd in the US, in Minnesota, with what's happening to our Palestinian brothers and sisters through that torture technique, the knee on the neck. And there's a very extensive report by Jewish Voices for Peace that documents these parallels between the abuses in the US with abuses in Palestine against Palestinians also trying to find their freedom. So the point here again is that we cannot focus on just one area of our communities. We have to look at this, what MLK called the interrelatedness of our struggles in order to be able to really make a difference for real. And this is what I find extremely heartening with this current movement because of its global nature. Now, what we're going to do now, we're going to highlight the central role that language has played in the recent history of the Black Lives Matter movement. And this point is really important because most supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement seem totally unaware of the centrality of language in the struggle. So let's go back to the very beginning of the movement in Florida at the end of the trial of George Zimmerman on July 13, 2013. And then what we have to do here, and here we're very grateful to the work of John Rickford and Charis King, analyzing the way that the jurors took into account, or actually did not take into account, the testimony of Rachel Jeantel. So Rachel Jeantel is a speaker of African American English, AAE, and she also has influences from Haitian Creole because her family, part of her family do come from Haiti. So Rachel Jeantel was on the stand testifying about what happened to Trayvon Martin for 6 hours. And she was the one describing the last moments of Trayvon Martin's too short life, right before he was gunned down by Zimmerman. But the jurors found her testimony unreliable and, quote, hard to understand. And as Rickford and King report, quote, no one mentioned Jeantel in 16 plus hours of deliberations. The testimony played no role whatsoever in the decision of the jurors. So as John and Cherise put it, Jeantel's dialect with both AAE and Haitian Creole influences was, quote, found guilty before Zimmerman was found innocent, right? And this is pretty major, right? So when I teach at MIT about language and justice or language and identity, we often discuss Rickford and King's analysis because what they show in the paper, actually a beautiful paper which I recommend to everyone, they show how this kind of discrimination extends beyond the US to other court cases where language discrimination plays a key role. And I want to, and I'll bring in Haiti later on in that same perspective. So basically, no color, your skin color, language can play a key role in discarding your chance to get justice, right? So that's why it's really, really important for us to think of the role of language in the Black Lives Matter movement. And the insights of Rickford and King have been recently amplified in a more recent paper, also in language by Jones et al. And that paper is about the fact that court transcribers often mistranscribe testimonies from Black speakers, from AA, African American English speakers. So in fact, what this means is that AAE speakers, when they go to court, they simply cannot get a fair trial. So this is clearly another case where Black lives cannot matter if our languages do not matter, be it in school, be it in courts, be it in linguistics department, etc. Now, what I like about Rickford and King and the Jones et al. Paper is that there's this dimension that goes beyond the US. Now, we can also go further back in time, going beyond space, going back in time, to understand the role that language and linguistics have played even in the 19th century against Black Lives Matter. And so before Rickford and King in 2016, there was Frederick Douglass in 1854 already. So here in this excerpt given at the commencement speech by Frederick Douglass, he was responding to a recently published volume, then recently published by Charles Hamilton Smith. And the volume was titled The Natural History of the Human Species, right? And it's interesting to look at these titles because they sound very scientific, right? The Natural History of the Human Species. And Douglass was clear about this. He saw this book as he puts it, mischievous and false. And he feared that it would become popular among racists. So basically, Smith was using science, including measuring the skulls of Black people, to try to extrapolate traits about the character. Now, this will sound familiar to many linguists who have looked at the history, say, of Broca, the Broca of Broca's aphasia. So going back to that slide, if you look carefully at Douglas's argument, he's able to undermine this claim about Black people. For example, the claim that's made that the voice of the Negroes is feeble and hoarse in the male sex. And basically, he understood very well that any feebleness in the voice of Black people is not the result of the skull or some innate disposition. It's a result of power. It's a very classic class analysis that any oppressed people or oppressed groups, be it women, be it Black people, if you're oppressed, then you will not speak loud. You will not speak, truth to power as easily as he could, Frederick Douglass. Okay, and then there is another claim that will be familiar to many linguists: is the idea that Black people don't have language, don't have grammatical language, and of course Douglass also refused that. So the point in this slide is that already in the 19th century, you had forward thinkers like Frederick Douglass arguing against the use of linguistics and science to dehumanize Black people. And this theme is going to be a recurrent one throughout this talk: the use of linguistics and science to make Black people look less human than we are. So now we're going to go a bit more global, beyond the US. Again, because Rickford, King's, Douglas's, and the insights can be connected to the global Black Lives Matter movement. And now we're going to zoom for a moment on my native Haiti, which in my analysis, which is probably biased, of course, is where the Black Lives Matter movement did start before it was called that. And I'll tell you more about it. So in 1804, Haiti became independent, fighting against the Spaniards, the British, the French, and we abolished slavery there, and we declared that, yes, we are also humans and we cannot be enslaved. And it's no accident that the throats of the Haitian people are still under the knees of white supremacy. And And it's no accident that it's often through language and culture, instead of race per se, that white supremacy becomes manifest in Haiti. Actually, so James Baldwin wouldn't be surprised by that in Haiti, it's not a matter of using race as a technology for oppression, it's the use of language for oppression, because James Baldwin understood very clearly that white is not skin color. White, as he put it, is a metaphor for power. As he said, white is Chase Manhattan Bank. So in Haiti, what plays the role in oppression is not race per se, although race also plays a role, but it's often through language and culture. So in fact, this cartoon is very telling. So this cartoon was from a week or so ago, published in this editorial by Franz Duval, who's the editorialist in the oldest Haitian newspaper, Le Nouvelliste. And Franz Duval was asking, why such a deafening silence in Haiti about George Floyd? And in the cartoon, as you can see, the signs are all in Kreyòl, which is Haiti's one and only national language. That's the language that everyone speaks. And what's also striking in this cartoon is the fact that the officer with his knee on George Floyd has black skin, white mask, reminding us of Fanon's analysis of self-hatred and internalized racism. And thank you, Gabrielle, for mentioning Fanon in your introduction. Yet, Franz Duval himself, as the author of the editorial, he seems unaware of the fact that if he had read Fanon, or if he understood Fanon, he would have written his piece in Kreyòl. His piece was written in French, although the cartoon is in Kreyòl, but the piece itself is in French. And so if you look at all these cartoons, they talk about the rights of Haitian people. And this one says, nous vivons tant que moun. We want to live like human beings. And yet the newspaper itself is mostly in French, and it proudly describes itself in both French and English, and no Kreyòl, right? So which means that the very editorialist who was asking people to pay attention to George Floyd and asking for social justice, doesn't notice that in Haiti, language is what keeps the throats of the Haitian people under the knees of white supremacy. But fortunately, other Haitians are aware of this tension, right? So here, it's a beautiful mural by artist Moïse Jerry Rosambert in Haiti. And you can see that here, it echoes the history of Haiti with Lady Justice, a Haitian woman, freeing George Floyd under the grips of white supremacy. So that Lady Justice, that Haitian Lady Justice, echoes the Haitian Revolution in 1804, which actually back then served as a model for Venezuela, Colombia, whose leaders came to Haiti for help in their own struggle for independence. And as you can see in this global current Black Lives Matter movement, Haitians are also playing a role. And I want to shout out to Sky Mineski, other Haitians in Brooklyn, joining hands with North Americans, protesting against injustice to Blacks in the US. So the reason is, now one could ask, why is Haitian leaders so silent? This is a complex story. There won't be time for that, but just to say quickly that probably because their throats as well are under the knees of white supremacy, right? So that's another talk. Why are they silent? Because they cannot speak given the geopolitics of the US towards Haiti. Now, so the first half of this talk, basically what we're doing here is to setting up the context for the geopolitical and the local social context for MIT-Haiti, which was founded back in 2010, soon after the terrible earthquake of January 2010. So MIT was founded by myself and my dear friend and colleague, Vijay Kumar, who's currently the director of the Jamal Latif World Education Lab at MIT's Open Learning. And I'll introduce Haiti later on as one example where linguistics can play a really key revolutionary role in transforming the Black Lives Matter movement. But before I get to MIT-Haiti as a stepping stone to the future, I need to introduce and applaud those linguists whose research is already laying out the foundations of the work that we linguists and educators can do and should be doing more of it to contribute to the global Black Lives Matter movement. So there are lots of names to cite, but some names have to be cited for given the what they've given us to work with. And I'll start with Geneva Smitherman, John Bohr, John Wickford, Saliko Komufwene, Anna Celia Zentela, Lisa Green, Samir Lim, who actually will be giving a talk soon at Abralin, Jonathan Rosa, and Charity Hudley, and many, many others. So please check out Samia Lim's talk coming soon in that same series, where you get to hear more about how to dismantle white supremacy. So now let's look at this tool that the LSA has given us to be able to go on fighting this struggle. So this statement that you see here on this slide makes it clear that linguistics and education are key tools in the global struggle for social justice. And here, the LSA deserves kudos for laying out so clearly one basic paradox and challenge for linguists' role in social justice. So let's start by contrasting item 1, which is an aspiration, and items 2 and 3, which reflect much in the actual practice of linguistics. So this is really important to understand this paradox. So item 1 says that we linguists, we have the training, the expertise to act for social justice and equality. Okay, so that's the aspiration. But items 2 and 3 tell us that the problem is that there are all these ideologies within linguistics that tend to define Black and brown people as inherently deficient. And item 3 says that if you look at the taxonomy of the way we classify languages, often these techniques were developed as part of conquest against Black and brown people. So basically, item 1 stands in contrast with items 2 and 3. So, and it goes even deeper. And what we're going to do in this talk is to look at, say, in the case of Creole studies, especially around my native language, Haitian Creole, the way in which linguists, how they produce information about Creole languages, how that feeds into linguistic prejudice, into racial hatred. And this will be a direct challenge to this LSA statement. But at the same time, that statement and other work that I'm going to mention soon help us understand the working of white privilege in linguistics. And I want to give another set of kudos to this amazing trio of linguists, Anne Charity Hudley, Christine Malinson, and Mary Burchels. Together, they wrote a very important paper that's going to be published soon on in the general language of the LSA, but that you can already find on the LSA website. So that paper is going to be followed by commentaries and by a response, and I'm also writing a commentary to it. I've written one, and so some of this talk will take parts from that commentary. But the basic message of, I'm going to call the three authors CHMB for short. So CHMB's basic message is one, it's about the importance of critical race theory and social justice for linguistics. But what I found most helpful in that paper is the way that they lay out these three principles for inclusion and equity. One, we have to make social impact a core criterion for excellence in linguistics. And two, which we'll be doing much of that here, we have to acknowledge linguistics origins as a tool for white supremacy. And three, we have to find ways to eliminate the race gap that excludes Black people from linguistics departments, especially those top-tiered linguistic departments like my own at MIT. So these are three important principles that CHMB laid out very clearly that I think we should be inspired by. So in many ways then, my talk today will be using the twin history of Creole languages and Creole studies and my own agenda for decolonial linguistics in order to amplify CHMB's plea for making linguistics more inclusive. To start with, my critique of Creole studies will serve to further analyze what CHMB calls the structuring force of institutional whiteness, aka white supremacy in academia. So in CHMB's term, one, the structuring force informs the development of theories, methods, and models in ways that reproduce racism in academia. Two, I'm going to describe how actually, so I can hear my little girl having a hard time here. Excuse me, hold on one second. I have to comfort her a little bit. So, hold on a second. Apologies.
You okay?
That's what happens when you give online talk
okay.
with a 2-year-old, not too far.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so so let's go back to how we're going to be using Creole studies. That's in item 2, actually, to show we're going to make it overt the ways in which white supremacy structures Creole studies, and then. So one such, this is item 3, one such misrepresentation starts with the postulation that Creole languages as a class contrast with other languages, so-called normal/regular languages. So we're going to use Creole studies to amplify CHND's points. So apart from CHND's work, one other important tool from my perspective as a Creolist in the Black Lives Matter movement is Salika Mufwene's work on race and racism in how we study the outcome of language contact and change in the Americas. Okay, so to make a long story short, what CHMB together with Mufwene and many others, from Smitherman to Lisa Green to Sami Alim, so what they've done is to document very carefully the pervasiveness of racism in linguistics. So in this light, one must remember Angela Davis's and Abraham X. Kendi's, many others, caveats that about our personal choices as scholars, as individuals, in the midst of racist societies. So when we're part of such racist societies, there is no such thing as being not racist. Okay, we can either be racist or anti-racist. There is no in between. It's like being on a train that's moving. If we just stay on the train and don't do anything, we're just going that direction. To be able to revert the train's direction, we have to act on it. So that's basically the message of Ibrahim X. Kendi, which I very much recommend to you. From this context, I was very heartened to see this statement from the Oregon Department of Linguistics, University of Oregon. And as far as I can tell, someone else can tell me if they know of other statements that are so strong. This is probably the strongest statement that I've seen that spells out actual action steps to participate in this Black Lives Matter struggle. And what they do, which I find very impressive, is that in the 2 paragraphs that start the statement, if you look at the paragraph 1, the part that's highlighted, they recognizes the role of police in dehumanizing Black people. And the next paragraph recognizes also the role of linguists in the same process in dehumanizing Black people, right? So I'm not saying that the linguists are as brutal as the police, but what you see here is a convergence of processes of dehumanization, right? So that's why I found this statement extremely encouraging for the honesty in understanding the role of linguistics in dehumanizing Black people, and then what are we going to do? And then what they do, they produce a series of steps that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-sensitive, that's the acronym SMART, right? SMART steps towards contributing to that movement. So now, with all of this in the background, now we're going to enter into the crux of the matter, okay, when it comes to our contributions to the Black Lives Matter movement. So basically, what we have to consider as linguists is a basic paradox about our mission as linguists and the sense of languages in movements for justice, right? So we linguists, we believe that, at least on paper, that all languages instantiate a universal capacity for language. So basically, all languages have this same capacity to express meaning, to express emotions, and to be used for communication, etc. But yet, what you see is that many languages with small l are excluded from the set of normal regular languages, and you find this exclusion of, say, Creole languages from the set of normal languages, even in the general language. So there was a paper by McWhorter in 1998 where the author consistently contrasts Creole languages with quote-unquote normal, quote-unquote regular languages, right? So basically that's the tension. How can we, as linguists, say that we believe that there is such a universal capacity for language, and at the same time, there's this gap between this universal assumption about language capacity and the way we hierarchize different languages. And where this becomes even more disturbing is in the fact that in education, this gap or this paradox between this egalitarian approach to language and the actual use or misuse of language has major impacts. So as I explained in this letter to Science, because 40% of students are being excluded from using the language in education, this takes a very heavy human cost for most of these students, and many of them in the post-colonies of Europe. Okay, so basically we have to ask, given what we know as linguists, what are we going to do about this? About the fact that we have 40% of students who are being impoverished through the misuse of language in the classroom. So what direct action, what direct action can we commit to solve these issues? Okay, so now this is the roadmap for the latter part of this talk. So we're going to start with analyzing various claims, actually contradictions around language and education in the context of post-colonies like Haiti. In part 2, I will connect these contradictions to a series of racist claims in linguistics. And this history will echo the part of the LSA statement about these taxonomic approaches to language that were developed as part of conquest. And then in part 3, I'll look at the future, some case studies, like in my own MIT-Haiti Initiative, where we hope to inspire direct action by linguists to help the global Black Lives Matter movement. Okay, so let's start with part 1 on intellectual history. And the goal here is to highlight white supremacy in Creole studies, but also more largely in linguistics. Okay, so these are, to me, some of the clearest examples of anti-Blackness in linguistics, and I've called them trumperies about Creole languages. So this is perhaps the most striking one, that Creole languages are linguistic fossils. Like, as a Creole speaker, I'm a fossil of humanity when I open my mouth to speak Creole. But yet, when I speak English, I guess I come back and rejoin the family of modern humans. But when I speak Creole, I'm a fossil of language. That's a pretty extraordinary claim, but one that's quoted all over the place, even by psychologists and by very well-meaning linguists. Now, another claim also by McWhorter in the New York Times, that Creoles are the only language which have started again. They most approximate some of the early languages. Actually, that turns out McWhorter is just echoing the same claim that you see in Bickerton. So basically, McWhorter is a neo-Bickertonian, but perhaps he has a broader audience. Now, this is item 3, that Creole is Haiti's language of broken French. That's in Reuters. Item 4, in the New Yorker, Haitian Creole is guttural French patois, right? So this is just a quick sample of anti-Creole, anti-Black claims in popular culture, but also within scholarship. Now, what I'm going to show you here are claims that directly impact the lives of Creole speakers because they impact education. So this is from Albert Volman, who claims that the use of Creole languages, and he was looking at Haiti, is that they cannot be, if you try to use Creole languages in schools, the language is going to die out, right? Because they cannot be harmonized with science and pedagogy, right? So basically, because of their very nature as morphologically reduced languages with very little apparatus to express concepts, those languages cannot be used in education. And if you try to use them, they're going to die out. And this is due to the very nature of Creoles. Now, we're going to look at cases where these sort of beliefs have become part of the intelligentsia, including in Haiti. So here we're going to look at some famous Haitian scholars that are quite well known, for example, for the defense of Black equality. So this is Antonin Firmin. Although Antonin Firmin was a major militant against racism in the 19th century, but he himself believed that Haitian people need French to evolve mentally, right? So this is quite amazing. And the same is true for, say, Aimé Césaire, who also has seen the belief that Creole could not be used for moral and intellectual uplift. You have to use French. And the same thing for historian Enoch Trouillot, that Creole is no orthography, no fixed syntax. Actually, Enoch Trouillot is a relative of Michel Trouillot, who at the same time was producing historical texts in Creole, directly contradicting the claim of Enoch Trouillot. Now, this is perhaps more spectacular. This is a famous historian and former president of Haiti, calling Creole a limitation and an infirmity. And he made this speech in a public university where he was applauded by the rectors of the university after he made that statement that that Haitian Creole is a limitation and an infirmité. And his speech was received with wide applause in the audience and at the University of Haiti. Okay, so now what I want to show you is that these claims about Creoles in Haiti by Haitians are linked to similar claims by linguists. So, for example, when Manigat, former president and historian Manigat, says that Creole is a handicap because of its reduced structure, he says that it's because of its pidgin origin, because Creole comes from pidgin French, which he called petit nègre, which is kind of very like a slur. Well, I won't say the N word here. But because of that origin in petit nègre, in pidgin French, that's why Creole is a handicap. Now, this notion of Creoles emerging from pidgins is one that you find right in the linguistic textbooks. So most linguistic textbooks, they present this pidgin to Creole history as if it's a truism about the history of Creoles, right? So I took one example. There are many, many more that you can see on the slide, that children of pidgin speakers, as they learn the pidgin, they make it into a Creole. That's why the Creole is creation, as Bickerton put it, creation from the egg, ab ovo creation. That's why it's a totally new language that's supposed to tell us about how the first human language emerged in the history of the human species, right? So this is what that classic dogma is about Creoles in linguistic textbooks. Now, what's the evidence? So as scientists, as scholars, we need to ask, what's the evidence? Are there really linguistic traits that distinguish all Creole languages from all non-Creole languages? And the answer is no. And then here, there's lots of work that I could cite, but there won't be time for that. But I would suggest to you work by Selikoro Mufwene that I've mentioned earlier, Enoch Abu, myself and Abu. And as far as I can tell, if you look deeply, very carefully, if you try to find any linguistic traits that would make Creole languages unlike non-Creole languages, you won't find them unless you find what you're looking for, which is often what happens in many of these papers. If you look for something, you find it because your data are being cherry-picked. And Mufwene very beautifully explains to us why there is no a priori reason that would expect Creoles to be any different, say, from Romance languages. Because if you look at the history, say, of Romance languages, Latin from giving us French and Italian and Spanish and Portuguese, that process of Latin seeding the Romance languages happened through migration and contact, and with conquest as well. And it's exactly what you find in the history of, say, the French-based Creoles, the Caribbean and the Indian Ocean. You have the same process of speakers of one language, an imperial language, moving into other regions, conquering other people. And in that process, you have languages being put into contact and new languages emerging out of that. And more recent work from Damon Blasi and Michaelis and Aspermath have shown similar results, that so here I like to call it, this is big data against the big dogmas of Creole exceptionalism, right? So those are linguists that carefully look at the whole range of structures and patterns, comparing Creole languages with non-Creole languages, and the result is pretty straightforward, that in fact, the grammars of Creoles inherit aspects of the grammars of the language that we're in contact. So therefore, there is no empirical reason to believe that Creoles are created ab ovo from pidgins. So then what do we have to conclude here? Well, the conclusion comes from some colleagues writing many years ago. Moysen and Meyer said that, well, most of these claims in the 19th century, they were based on racism, but they were optimistic. They say, well, 19th century. I would say that including claims in the 21st century, they are still based on racism. But what I like about Moysen is that it says very clearly that from a linguistic standpoint, there is no such thing as a Creole language. It's just a language. The term Creole has validity, but strictly from a historical perspective. It describes a particular colonial situation that gave us those Creole languages, and the name has that validity, but it's not a linguistic term that refers to structural patterns. So if that's the case, then if a Creole is just a normal language, all we need is a zero theory of Creole formation. We don't need any special theory for Creole formation. And that's the paper that I wrote with Enoch Abo and DeGraff, where we go into depth trying to defend that position. Okay, so now let's take a break a bit from linguistics. Let's go through a bit of a personal detour. So now I'm going to do a bit of autobiography here, because again, as I said at the beginning, these are very personal issues, and for us to make sense of them, at least for me to make sense of them, I have to understand where I came from, and how I faced this white supremacy in my own history as a student and now as a faculty at MIT. And this detour, I think, is necessary for full disclosure, because this is, again, not simply an academic matter for me. It's also a personal matter of liberation, and which I'm still working on, obviously. So I still read by my Fanon, and I still try to see my own contradictions when it comes to this internalized racism that came through history and the way I was socialized by my parents and by schools. Okay, so this is me as a child when I used to be cute. So now this is actually I thank my brother for finding Maleo, for finding this report card and sharing it with me. And what that card shows is how the school itself implements hegemony, right? For example, it forbids the use of Creole. Now it's changed. Now that school has made lots of progress and now allows Creole to be used, even teaches Creole, but although it doesn't teach yet in Creole, it doesn't teach yet physics and math in Creole, but at least it's allowing, it's teaching Creole. So there is progress. But when I was a student there, so what I was reading was, say, texts about Haitian literature, and those texts had poems where the poets were telling us clearly, forget about your Creole. Your Creole is ridiculous. Creole will never be nothing but a patois, nothing but a jargon. And then the last part highlighted says, parents, don't ever speak Creole to your children. Don't ever speak Creole to your children. Now imagine in the country where most parents speak only Creole, if you cannot speak Creole to your children, you just don't speak to them at all, right? But that's what I grew up with. And to be clear, this language issue is a reflex of larger racial issues, because this, for example, is my cahier de souvenir, my notebook, when I was very young in kindergarten. And you can see this is the bluest eye made Haitian, right? Because what kids are getting in Haiti, that's what you grew up with, that this is beautiful images of white children, right? So we grew up in Haiti with the bluest eye across the entire nation. And it took me leaving Haiti, it took me, working at Bell Labs, to discover that Haitian Creole was not broken French, it was a real language. So here I've acknowledged how white supremacy has impacted me personally in my belief about my native language, in my belief about racial beauty as well. So I think this is where we can go back to Charity Hurdley, Mallinson, and Bushel's plea that we linguists also have to do that kind of biography for the entire field and understand how white supremacy has also structured the way we research and teach about languages. Okay, and that's what we'll do here for Creole studies. So basically, the point here in the case of Creole studies is that those claims about Creoles, this is where they come from. They're embedded in the history of this triangular trade where Europeans made Africans into lesser humans. And for that mission to succeed, for the Europeans to convince the Africans and convince themselves that the Africans were lesser humans, they also had to speak lesser languages. And this is not just only in the case of Haiti and the Caribbean. This is very general. So in fact, we can go back to 1492 to Nebrija. So Nebrija was the earliest Spanish grammarian. And as Columbus was sailing to conquer the Americas, Nebrija gave a grammar of Spanish to Queen Isabella. And so basically, Nebrija understood something which Stephen Biko in South Africa said years later, that the most powerful weapon of the oppressor is in the mind of the oppressed, right? And this is exactly what Nebrija is telling the Queen Isabella back in 1492. Look, my queen, you have to impose Spanish to the New World, because once you do that, you'll be able to put your knee on the throats of the Incas, of the Aztecs, of the Mayans. You'll be able to convince them that they are inferior. And this is not just Nebrija and Spain. You find the same pattern in the history of the British Empire. So this is 1835. This is this famous minute on Indian education by Lord Macaulay. And Lord Macaulay, against all science, I don't know whether, well, back then, he might not have known of Sir John's The History of Indo-Europeans. But Macaulay said, well, look, you Indians, your language, your Hindi, deriving from Sanskrit, is nothing compared to English. English is a real language that has to educate you. But the goal of Macaulay, very much like that of Nebrija, was to convince the Indians that they were inferior. And what Macaulay wanted to do was to create a class of Indians, as he says, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, opinions, morals, and intellect, right? So that was Macaulay's goal, to use language to keep Indians subservient to the British Empire. So clearly then, we've seen these examples of whiteness, white supremacy as a structuring force in academia. Now, what I'm going to show you is something here more concrete in terms of linguistic theory. Now, this is a family tree for languages. Now, as we know, these family trees are very popular in intro to linguistics, right? And what you can see here is that there are no Creole languages in these family trees, none whatsoever. So is that surprising? Well, maybe that should not be surprising, because the person who created this model, his name is August Schleicher, in the late 19th century. He was inspired by Darwin, by the family tree, the tree of life of Darwin. And he pretty much believed that one can use a similar framework to rank humanity based on the level of the languages, right? So clearly, his model was driven by a desire to impose power, European power on the rest of the world. And Schleicher was very clear about that. So when he wrote this book called The Significance of Language, again, interesting title, for the natural history of man. And basically his point was that we can apply Darwin's framework to classify languages. Languages start out simpler and then they become complex. And basically, you can use degrees of complexity of languages to compute different degrees of humanity. As he called it, the various stages of languages are to be considered as the perceptible traits of various grades of men. So linguistics was a tool to measure degrees of humanity. Okay, so now let's go back to the present. And what I want to show you now is how, alongside hegemony in linguistics, another factor in this anti-Blackness movement of white supremacy is the use of language for geopolitics. Okay, now this is in the case of Haiti, but also the same will be true for so-called Francophone Africa. So here I like this quote by Giscard d'Estaing, because here Giscard d'Estaing was president of France in the late 70s. It clearly describes what Francophonie is about. So it makes it clear that Francophonie is a tool for economic power. So basically, the French language is to be used not as a gift for education of the Francophone world. No, Francophonie is a powerful tool for France's political and economic domination. So basically, Francophonie is not for development of Africa or Haiti. Francophonie, like the franc CFA, like the currency, the French-based currency used in African countries, it's not for Africa, it's for France. Okay, and it says it very clearly. And that's why we have to push Francophonie throughout the world, because it's an essential element of our politics. And I'm going to show you now a video that clearly shows Francophonie in action in Haiti. So this is a pitch, this is a dialogue between Emmanuel Macron, French president, and Jovenel Moïse, Haitian president, in December 2017. And well, let's listen together.
Hi, Michel. I think that you have to share your computer or audio.
Yeah, you can hear you.
Okay, you don't hear it? You don't hear it?
Try again. No, we can hear it.
Okay. You have to stop the share first.
Stop the share. Okay.
And then try it again. In the window, you're going to see an
option. Oh, I see.
Below.
I get it. Yes, thank you. I see it. Okay. Thank you for telling me. Okay, so let's start again. Thank you. Let me go back.
La francophonie est également un élément qui nous unit, Haïti faisant partie justement des membres fondateurs, et je souhaite que nous puissions encourager la région de manière très concrète, et nous allons nous y employer les initiatives que vous prenez en ce sens.
Au cours de nos échanges, nous avons convenu de renforcer les liens commerciaux entre les deux pays. La coopération en matière d'éducation à tous les niveaux, surtout l'enseignement supérieur et la formation professionnelle. Vous pouvez compter sur nous. Nous sommes en train de travailler pour que le français, comme nous l'avons si bien dit, qui est notre langue officielle, soit en fait une langue, la langue de la CARICOM aussi. Et nous sommes en train de travailler pour que nos frères de la Martinique et de la Guadeloupe puissent participer aussi dans ce grand mouvement de la CARICOM, parce que la CARICOM, ce sont des pays de la Caraïbe, et je pense que Martinique et Guadeloupe font partie aussi de la CARICOM. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, messieurs, dames.
So this is quite amazing, actually, because in 2 minutes, there are so many layers of colonialism that it might take another 20 minutes to totally demystify what happened here. But first of all, the point that's most important is that Jovenel Moïse tells Macron that French is our official language in the singular, that he's going to push that in CARICOM. But what he fails to say is that, in fact, French is one of 2 official languages, and that only Kreyòl in Haiti is known and is declared officially as the one national language. And it says very clearly in Article 5 that Kreyòl is the one language that binds all Haitians together as a nation, and that there are 2, not 1, 2 official languages. Now, what's also quite stupefying is that Macron himself, in responding to Jovenel Moïse, he speaks Kreyòl, not French, after Jovenel told him that he was going to push our official language in CARICOM. So what I want to stress is that this is a clear example of how Francophonie is being played in geopolitics. And what I find also quite distressing, to be honest, is the fact that if you look at Haitian history, we had leaders who understood very well the role that French was going to play in keeping Haiti subservient to French interests. For example, Dessalines, so because of time, we have to speed up a bit. But Dessalines understood that we have our own language. So when someone would speak to him in French, say, well, you have your own language. Why not use it? Why try to look for someone else's language? And he also had speeches where he explained that, well, we have to be careful about the eloquence of French agents, because it's this eloquence of French agents that will keep us colonized, even though we might be independent nominally. But if we don't watch out for this eloquence of the French agents, we will be recolonized. And Dessalines understood as well, and this is what I find so relevant for the Black Lives Matter movement, that Black, the very notion of race, was not biological. He understood already in 1805 that Black was a political construct. For example, alongside his Article 1 in 1805, in the Constitution back then, where he abolishes slavery, he declares all Haitians to be equal and brothers. And he also understands in Article 14 that we should not be using skin color to describe Haitians. All Haitians are going to be known as Black. So for Dessalines in 1805, even as he was promoting Creole as a real language, he was saying clearly that watch out for the hegemony of racial classification. Therefore, we all will be known as Black. So he understood, like Baldwin, that Black and whites are tools for power. And in terms of education, also back in 1807, so this is Senator Gérin, who was a contemporary of Dessalines. So in 1807, he understood as well that to be independent, Haiti had to get rid of French, and he used a term which I find actually quite striking. We should get rid of French technology. So he understood that language, like race, was a technology for domination. He said, well, let's erase this use of French technology. Instead, let's compose a Creole grammar that we'll use in our schools instead of French. Now, what is a bit sad, but I guess it's the reality of geopolitics, that French technology is still what you see in Haiti today. So in Haiti today, if you go to the major websites of offices, state offices and Ministry of Education, and even a new site that just launched with big money from the World Bank, etc., all these sites are in French. Even though the Constitution says that Creole is the one national language, all these majorly funded projects, they're all producing materials in French. Now, we can understand why Macron's speech to Jovenel Moïse was no accident, right? Because French technology is still king in Haitian schools, reinforcing the use of Haiti as a peon for French power. And often it's cast as French against the US, but that's a different story. But on paper, though, it's clear that Haitians understand that first, Creole is indeed our national language, but also, and this is back from the 80s, we need to use Creole in education. But yet, in reality, what you find is that linguists and educators, through the kind of knowledge we produce about Creole, we've kept Haiti in a state of apartheid, of apartheid. But these are simple facts that every Haitian speaks Creole, but the primary language of instruction is French, which is spoken by only a small percentage of Haitians, at most 5%, if you think of fluent French. And of course, this is a recipe for disaster. And you can look at items 2 through 5 here. So only 10% of Haitians finish school, only 1% gets college, and it's rote learning throughout. So basically, language is a tool among other tools that keeps Haiti impoverished. So basically, what we have to accept is that the use of French in Haitian schools has become a tool for academic failure. But even as it's causing this failure, what it's also doing is being used successfully as a tool for empire building and for elite closure, basically for the creation and transmission of power to benefit France and together with a small but powerful group of Haitian francophones and francophiles. Now, to give you a sense of what it means for Haitian kids to be taught in French in Haiti, so I have this short video, which I've darkened for privacy reasons, so that way the teachers and students are protected in terms of their identity. So look at this video and some background. So in Haitian Creole, again, it's a normal language. It emerged in contact with French and African languages, and there are sound change rules that are very regular. For example, in French, where you get rounded vowels, in Haitian Creole, you get the unrounded counterpart. So where in French you get E, in Creole you get A. Where you get in Creole you get E. Where you get U, you get E. Okay, so the rounded vowel of French are mapped into unrounded vowels in Creole. And also there are no R's in coda position. So where you have an R, typically, I mean, there are dialects that are different in Haiti, but typically if you have an R at the end of a syllable in Creole, you don't find that. So if I were to give you a little test and say, well, how do you say voiture in Creole? French voiture becomes voiture. French couleur becomes Creole coulet. French bleu becomes Creole blé. Okay, this is a regular sound change rule, which actually, again, is in support of mapping Haitian as a normal language in family tree models. So now listen to these cool kids being in the language class. So what you don't get in the video, because it's darkened, is the facial expressions of the teacher. Basically, she shows sheer disgust that the kids cannot say couleur. The kids are saying coulet. And at no point does she tell the kids, look, in Creole, it's coulet. In French, you might only say couleur. No point does she say that. So basically, the kids are getting the message from the get-go that the native Creole is incorrect. It's broken French, really. And it's, again, I'm going to insist that and we can go into also religion and culture, but because of time, I'm going to restrict it on just the racial component. It's not just an issue of language. This is a reflex of anti-Blackness that comes through how Creole is perceived. And you can see that clearly in this photo, because the same teacher shows the kids what they can get if they are good children. And she shows an example of a kid that looks nothing like a Haitian girl getting gifts for Christmas. Okay, and that should remind you of these images that I myself grew up with in Haiti of what I've called my bluest eye, my own bluest eye. And beyond schools, you also have something now which will echo the paper by King and Rickford and the paper by Jones et al. Is that the population cannot get justice in Creole, so which means that there is no justice at all. So you go to court and you're being judged and tried in French. Although everyone in the court speaks Creole, but everything is done in French, and you might by chance find out whether or not you're guilty, you're deemed guilty or innocent. So what does that mean? It means then that what you see is that the ritual gentles and those documented in the paper by Jones et al. In Haiti, it happens throughout the population. So really, Black lives cannot matter if our languages do not matter. Okay, so now, so what's the road ahead? So here I'm going to take from Fanon's insight that what we have to do, given, and Haiti is just one case of many in the Caribbean. So if my colleague Hubert Devenish is here, he could tell us more about the case in Jamaica. If Marta Dishkov was here, she would tell us more about Pacamento in Curaçao, Aruba, and Bonaire. So this is a general state of the Caribbean, and you can also go to Africa and find similar cases. So we have to get rid of the worm-eaten roots of the structure, and the worms in the structure is white supremacy, right? And this is exactly what Charity Hudley, Manington, and Buchholz tell us very clearly, that we have to acknowledge these worm-eaten roots and try to get rid of them, okay? Or in the words of Michel Foucault, we have to understand the way these regime of truth work and then try to ascertain a new politics, a new politics of truth. Okay, so that the last part now is the part where I want to be optimistic, and I want to show models that I trust can put linguistics in the right path for the Black Lives Matter movement in some concrete fashion, some concrete ways. Okay, so this slide is basically what at some point I will want to show as a before and after overview of what we've done in Haiti as part of the MIT-Haiti Initiative, right? So the before will be what's happening now, mostly in Haiti, French-based. It's not at all active. It's basically baby drill, in the sense that you just memorize for exams, little relevance to the children's needs and their reality. And our goal is to get rid of this system and to replace it with a system that's really inclusive. And here, this is an image from Haiti of 3 rocks of fire that holds a pot for the family, and the 3 rocks of fire that hold the pot together. And here I have this idea of the pot of education that will feed the soul of the nation. And the 3 rocks are the native language, Kreyòl, active learning, and technology. Technology in the large sense of the term, not just computers and laptops and phones, but technology, anything that allows you to engage with the materials in some interactive fashion, right? So this is what I like to see as the blueprint for the initiative. And our hope in the initiative is that this model can be applicable to many, if not most, post-colonies in the global South. And this is why we are so happy to have the collaboration of colleagues at JWell, Vijay Kumar, and at MIT Open Learning, who are the experts in these blueprints to really revamp education in the global South. So I love this video that I always have to share when I present about this project, because these are 2 little girls in the 4th grade, Krisla and Joey Kam, and they are 9-year-old girls. And it's the 3rd time, it was back in 2010, 2011, that they were playing computer games in Kreyòl in Haiti. And it was actually, it was the 3rd time they were playing any computer game at all in any language, but this was in Kreyòl. And it was a game that was given to us by Mr. Nursbaum about place value. So if you take a number like 123, you have to decide that 1 is in the hundreds, 2 in the tens, and 3 in the units. And as you do that, you get to kill parrots. And the girls were getting excited about killing parrots. And what's beautiful is that they were so happy playing the games that they got into song and dance spontaneously. They created a song to go along with the game. So let's listen to that. So those girls, they wanted to come back during the weekend to keep playing those games. And they're at the L'École Communautaire Matenois in a small village in the mountains, in the remote island of La Gonave. And it was just amazing to see the passion that they were having doing math in Kreyòl. And I would bet $1 million that could never have happened in such a context if the games were in French. Never. But yet, when I gave post-pilot interviews to these students at the L'École Communautaire Matenois, it was heartening that most of them understood the importance of Kreyòl, because I asked them. So let's listen to this girl, for example.
Mais sans penser que tu as plus bon pour faire en créole ou en français?
En créole.
Pour qui ça?
Pour que bien comprendre.
Okay.
So they understood that the use of Kreyòl allowed them to do math much better, right? Which, when I see these videos, I get so enraged to think that the Ministry of Education, with all its funding, they are still producing materials in French. When it's clear, the data are also clear how the kids learn so much better and with so much joy in Creole. But at the same time, there was a couple of cases out of some 20 cases, which is very heartening, so this one kid and another kid said clearly they wanted the games to be done in French. And you should listen to the kid and look at also the body language in how this kid is telling you that he would have preferred French for the games, because that's also very telling.
Qui langue pour nous servir avec pour tu jouer français ou bien créole?
Français.
Pour qui ça?
J'ai un coupon. Un coupon français.
Vous comprenez français, hein?
Oui.
Donc vous avez préféré pour jouer en français?
Oui.
Ok. Vous parlez français?
Je ne parle pas français. Non.
Non, je comprends français. Si vous parlez français, comment on fait comprendre français?
On connaît le français.
Au français? Et créole, est-ce qu'on connaît au créole?
On connaît tout.
On connaît tout mon créole?
Oui.
Et pourtant, on dit que tu as préféré tes voitures en français. Pour qui ça?
Qui ça?
On dit que tu as préféré tes voitures en français. Pour qui ça? Pour qui ça, l'osni?
Quand on parle.
Tu veux qu'on parle?
Oui.
Ok. Ok, l'osni. M'abdou, grand merci.
So this is heartbreaking because this child was one of the students doing the most poorly in math. He couldn't do math. So in fact, he would have so benefited from doing math in Creole, but he didn't want to do math. He wanted to learn French, even while doing math. And what this shows is, again, the linguistic bird's eye that Toni Morrison told us so insightfully about. It doesn't matter that speaking French in this context won't help him much, but because he sees French as what makes him human, because that's what his parents tell him, and that's what the community tells him. All the scientists around him tells him that, look, to be human, to be a full citizen, you have to speak French. So therefore, math didn't matter. He wants to speak French. You see, and this is the challenge that we're facing. But luckily, so if you read this paper, it's on my website, you'll get more details about this experiment. But what we found is that eventually we also need, the faculty at the university level to help us in this struggle. And what we found is that there is a core of Haitian faculty who are willing to go that route. And so we can just listen to them and also pay them homage.
C'est la première fois on gros effort fait comme ça pour tout un logiciel dans niveau technologique ça il faut arriver fait puis on mettre dans créole donc la plus accessible parce que il était clair que moyen que on apprendre plus bien c'est l'on apprendre dans langue maternelle dans langue maman papa.
Donc li sorti dans cadre théorique là pour rentrer dans une véritable pratique de laboratoire, même le laboratoire là pas réel, mais ça l'a fait dans le logiciel, c'est un coup laboratoire qui est devant.
Donc, kounia, professeur vient réaliser qui gens outils ça yo, qu'a aidé dans former une nouvelle génération professeurs, maîtres, maîtresses et étudiants qui ka vinn plus créatif, qui ka commencé à faire bon genre recherche dans sciences et mathématiques. Et puis comme ça, il y a cap contribuer dans le développement économique paysan tout bon vrai.
Okay, so to try to sum up, what we've seen so far. So after each workshop, we do lots of workshops in Haiti with teachers. We've done them from 2012 to 2016, and in 2017 we had a major symposium to gather the teachers together and present them with what was accomplished and next steps. But there is one particular quote that I want to share because it tells us what the opportunity is, but also what the challenge remains, and so this is from a teacher of physics. So what he said is that when we ask him, what did he notice as major change in his classroom when he uses Creole? So basically, his point is one that we expected. He says, well, when I teach in Creole, many changes occur because children ask more questions. And sometimes you even feel that they're speaking too much, right? And basically you think that, well, sometimes it's overwhelmed because it's not used to a classroom where kids are asking questions and basically being active. And then what does he do when he gets overwhelmed? He goes back to French. Then he says, you switch over to French so that there will be less interaction in the class. So clearly, this simple quote tells us that in Haiti, you cannot do quality education, you cannot do active learning in French, you have to do it in Creole. And basically Creole is used when you want to teach, and you use French when you want to control your crowd, when you want to put your knee on the throat of the children, when you want to make them shut up, okay? But we have some good results. So what we've done is with Glenda Stump, a colleague at MIT Open Learning, Dr. Glenda Stump, we've analyzed those surveys results. And what we see is that there's been a deep change in attitudes and in classroom practices among the faculty who take part in the workshop that we've done. So we see more positive attitudes towards Creole, towards active learning, and towards technology in teaching. So you can go on the LSA website, on my website, and you can download this paper by myself and Glenda Stump, where we analyze the results of this work, both in Matenois, but also at universities in Haiti. And what we have as well is we have a set of tools that we've developed over the past 10 years or so, active learning tools in physics, biology, chemistry, math, and we have a beautiful book that's come out last year. It's an active learning guide for physics by Paul Belloni, myself, and by Glenda Stump, who's our pedagogy expert. And we have a whole series of active learning guides in the works that should be coming out this year and next year on biology, on chemistry, and on math and mathematics. And also very exciting is, again, those tools online, all in Creole, that teachers can use for active learning in STEM. And in the next, so where do we go next? So a recent step forward, since September of last year, my colleague and friend at MIT, Heinz Miller in the mathematics department, and myself, we've launched a new platform, MIT-Haiti.net. And so what I'd like to discuss to end is what we've accomplished since September through this platform. And we see this platform as a model for other disenfranchised communities that lack access to quality education, mostly in the global South. So some history. So when we started back in 2010, when we launched this initiative back in 2010, the focus, because of MIT, was mostly on STEM and mostly at university level. But clearly, what we heard from the teachers is that they need more. For this movement for social justice to work, we need to have materials in all disciplines at all levels in Creole. But obviously at MIT, we're a small team, so we cannot do it ourselves. But in Haiti, we have a beautiful saying that says, "Me en pile, chai palou." So many hands make the load lighter. So the idea is that we could work in collaboration, often with volunteers, and actually help create materials at all levels and for all disciplines in Creole by basically crowdsourcing, co-creating, and curating, because we always want the quality to be high. So this is what we've done in this platform, is to invite faculty and students all over Haiti and beyond, also in the US and elsewhere, to contribute materials to this platform in Creole. As long as it's in Creole, it respects active learning pedagogy, and also it can be shared freely, because we insist that it's a combit, it's a volunteering cooperation. So we want the materials to be available for free and easily downloadable by all. So this is where we are now. So we've had a call for submissions, and so far we have some 200 items to the platform, which is amazing. That since September, after we launched, we got materials in basically many fields of STEM, literature. We have things coming in geography and history. We have some major historians. Jacques Casimir I hope he's listening. Jacques Casimir has promised us some materials in Creole. So Jacques Casimir is a special kind of historian that we don't have often in Haiti writing history in Creole for Creole speakers. And I've been extremely heartened to know that Jean Casimir will also contribute to the platform. So this is again the criteria for acceptance. And this is very, very exciting. And I think it's making the sea change that we've been hoping for, because now actually, and I want to give credit to many, many, many young Haitians in Haiti, because we've become part of this ecosystem of Haitians in Haiti who understand the value of Creole against the wishes of white supremacy, demeaning our language. And they are producing quality materials in Creole in all domains. And I think this is what's going to turn the country around. And this movement is extending beyond Haiti. You can see it as well in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, in Curacao, in Aruba. So here you can see pictures in Jamaica and with colleagues from Aruba and Curacao. And so basically, I think this is tracing a model for how linguists, together with educators, can unite for global impact. And let's still think about these statistics that some 40%, this is not a small number, 40% of students worldwide are still being mistaught in a foreign language. And what are we linguists doing about this? These are languages that we study. We study them, we love them, and yet 40% of students in the world cannot study in those languages that we study ourselves. So, so basically the point here is that racial prejudice, including discrimination based on language, is keeping an hegemonic knee on the throats of too many of us worldwide, in schools, at work, in the courts, etc. So now we have to take direct action. And one last one I want to make, which is actually a key point in Charity Hudley, Mallinson, and Bushell's paper, is that one reason why we haven't made enough progress on this front is because of a structural issue in the field of linguistics among linguists. And what is this issue? This issue is, if you look at top-tiered research departments of linguistics in the US, there is a rarity of Black and brown folks in these departments, starting with my own at MIT. So why is that? So what CHMB, Charity Hudley, Mallinson, and Bushell's discuss is the fact that there's a bottleneck on the pipeline. So often you hear that there's a pipeline issue. That's why we don't have more Black linguists in those departments, because there's a pipeline issue. But then if you look at those departments, there's a ranking of fields where those very fields that can contribute to the Black Lives Matter movement, those fields are excluded or ranked below. You see, I myself, both at MIT and beyond, I've been asked, is your work really linguistics, Michel? Is that linguistics? Do you imagine that people ask me, is what I do linguistics? Or I would ask, I didn't know MIT does this kind of linguistics, Okay, so I want to end this talk though with some hope. And I'm going to also pay homage to 3 linguists who have now passed, unfortunately, and who've had major impact in my work. And this is where things get very personal and very emotional as well. And these 3 linguists have one thing in common, is that all 3 of them did work that were directly germane to the Black Lives Matter movement writ large, globally, okay? So it's them. I want to show you these 3 linguists. On the left, Ken Hale, who died about 10 years ago. In the center, Yves Dejean from Haiti, Papa Yves, who died a couple of years ago. On the right, Wayne O'Neill, who died just a couple of months ago. And so let's keep a bit of silence in the memory, just a short moment of silence. And so what I want to do now, I want to just illustrate how basically linguists, we're hurting ourselves by excluding the type of work that those linguists were doing. In fact, when we do admissions, or when we look for new faculty in our hiring, there's this implicit or sometimes very explicit ranking of what fields are to be considered. And yet those 3 linguists that have had such an impact on me, the kind of work they've done definitely fall outside what's been called in those departments core, and I use the core with those huge scare quotes. The works went beyond the core, and yet this work has had so much impact on what the Black Lives Matter movement writ large. So let's look at some of the quotes from these linguists that I want to share with you. So this is Ken Hale. So Ken Hale said clearly that what mattered to him in terms of his success as a linguist was the impact, and this reminds us now of CHMB's social impact factor. What mattered to Ken Hale is the impact that his work had on the speakers whose languages he studies. And let's look at Yves Desjans. So Yves Desjans is a very colorful writer. He said very colorfully, I don't care about Creole languages. I don't care about Haitian Creole. What I care about is those who speak Creole. You see, so for him, although he's a linguist, but what he really deeply cares about is not the language per se, but what is my work doing to help those people who speak Creole? And when O'Neill, actually, I'm very indebted to him because he's the one who brought me to MIT. He's the one who came to my talk that I gave in Boston at the LSE many years ago. And with him and Ken Hale, they both came to my talk. And they are the ones who maybe I can learn more someday, who actually brought me to MIT, who made me the offer to come to MIT. So I'm very grateful to Wayne. But Wayne deeply believed in the importance of linguistics against racism, against language prejudice, because he believed that once we can make the public understand that language will govern, whether it's Navajo, whether it's African American English, once they can understand that, then the hope is that the racism can be revealed as ignorance, because once people understand that scientifically, Haitian Creole, Navajo, Wampanoag, AAE, Spanglish, they're all structured systems, then maybe we can make the racism disappear. That was the hope. And now looking towards the future, I want to thank two contemporaries for pursuing this mission that Ken Hale and Wayne and Yves Desjans traced for us. So Norvin Richards, my colleague at MIT, and Jesse Little-Gobert, now a leader in the Wampanoag Nation, they were both students of Ken Hale, and they are still pushing Ken's work forward. So Norvin runs the MIT Indigenous Language Initiative. Please look it up on the MIT website. And Jessie now is passing her own language, the Wampanoag language, which was defunct, which was as part of the US genocide. Remember that US history started with these two crimes, these two sins, the genocide of the natives and then slavery. So as a result of the genocide, physical, but also cultural and intellectual, Wampanoag became defunct. Jessie, with the help of Ken Hale, was the leader of reviving the Wampanoag language. And now, look, Jessie's teaching a new generation of brown children to speak Wampanoag, and the title of this slide is thanks to Jessie. I won't try to say it, maybe Jessie one day will say it to us, is thanks a lot in Wampanoag. So Ken died 10 years before Trayvon Martin was killed and the launch of the Black Lives Matter movement. But given his legacy, I have no doubt, and Jessie herself believes that he would have definitely approved of this work of the Black Lives Matter movement. And then, so again, this is Jessie. There's a movie that I recommend called We Still Live Here to see what Jessie has done for Wampanoag. And Jessie reports that Ken said once that we human beings, we are in the final phase of evolution when humans become humane. And that sounds so much like Ken. It's a very deep thought that what's happening now today with the Black Lives Matter movement is a sign that finally we are becoming humane. And I think that linguists can become better supporters of Black Lives Matter. But to do that, we have to acknowledge the role that white supremacy has played in our field and how we often keep implementing that same structuring in our departments, in our research, in our writings, and we have to go beyond that. So my hope is that this talk will have shown the fault lines in our field through history, but also how we can do better, much, much better. So this is the last slide, and I'm happy to give thanks to my MIT-Haiti family, worldwide and to our many supporters in the past and the present, especially NSF, National Science Foundation, FOCAL, Michel DeGraff and the Soros Foundation, the US Embassy in Haiti, Jennifer Noisette, when she was there, extremely helpful. The Prime Minister's office in Haiti, Laurent Lamotte, was key in launching this work when he was Prime Minister. Minister of Education, especially Ministers Pierre Vaneur and Leslie Maniga, the Wade Foundation, the Campus Henri Christophe of Haiti State University, Jean-Marie Théodat, Odalbert Benemé, who made it possible for MIT-Haiti to collaborate on this campus. And special thanks to MIT's Open Learning, to Vijay Kumar, my comrade in arms, and to the MIT Jamal Latif World Education Lab, the JWEL Lab, and recently we have Kean University, who've come into the fold with Jeffrey Toney and Paul Belloni, and now we have 2 interns from Kean University helping with that platform. And for the platform, we also have to thank Sora, Edward Stroh, and Becky Akang. And now we have Ezra Emer, who just joined. So it's a growing family, and I thank everyone for amazing work that I feel is so inherent, so important for the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's it. Thank you for your patience. And now fire your questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation, for putting forward your family here, for bringing us your scholarship. And so I'm delighted. Well, many people from the audience are urging apologies from Abralin about a case of a Black student from Brazil who was blocked by Abralin, but I think it's not my case because I'm not from Abralin. I'm here moderating this kind of excellent talk. So I really understand that you have to now receive different demands for racial justice. I think it's a nice opportunity for Miguel to come here because I'm not the person, but I stand in solidarity because I'm a Black scholar in Brazil, and I had been critiquing some of the associations in Brazil. I think it's a moment for us to talk more about that. But Professor Michel DeGraff, now let me just talk to you about your presentation because I'm young, and I think when I brought Fanon firstly to us because it's my inspiration, because it informed my work, and I'm so glad that you just presented some of the things here in Brazil. We still see linguists or associations and they still work on something like a national language, totally ignoring sometimes the languages, because we are not here to speak. They are interlanguage, for example, or pidgins, but they are languages. It's what Creole is, and you have been advocating for demanding more attention to not categorizing, because categorizations are coming from modern countries such as racism, right? How do you interpret the question over why do national associations of linguistics still remain privileging national languages, for example, such as if they were major languages for our communities? For example, here in Brazil, we have linguists who advocate for Portuguese as the language spoken by the majority Brazilians in Brazil, but we have been listening to linguists speaking that this is something like a variety, or not a language, for example. But how do you interpret this kind of privilege they are demanding all the time when they are just when they hold, for example, congress or a talk, for example, when they do not invite Black scholars to speak about the most diverse themes. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the paper that I mentioned throughout by Charity Hurdley, Mallinson, and Buchholz, that's exactly the issue that they go into. They take the LSA Statement on Race as a launching pad to then ask these very questions. How is it that various organizations, including in the past the LSA, but also looking at different linguistic departments, say in the US, because they focus on the US mostly. But I think what they say about the US perhaps could be extrapolated to Brazil with necessary caveats. So I would suggest that you look at that paper, and because basically the point is that it's white supremacy in action, that those organizations often they implement, they show what they call the structuring force of white supremacy. And you can also look at work by Bourdieu and Foucault, and even Fanon, as you mentioned, and the role of knowledge production in keeping certain power hierarchies intact, right? So if, say, it's a white Brazilians who call the shots in these organizations, in these departments, then obviously they're going to favor certain types of languages over others. But I can say that at MIT we've had the privilege to, over the years, welcome many students from Brazil. In fact, Ken Hill, when he was alive, worked with many of them. And there's been lots of work on indigenous languages of Brazil at MIT. And I know that some of our students went back to Brazil and are pushing for more work on indigenous languages in Brazil. So what you could do, I think I could, because I don't want to miss names, I don't want to cite names and forget others, you could go to the MIT website and look at our dissertations, look at the titles, and you'll see many titles of theses were about indigenous languages of Brazil. So I think it will take some push, just like what the LSC has done, what scholars like Charity Hurdley and Mallinson and Buchholz, what they've done for the US. You'll have to do something similar in the context of Brazil to try to make linguists aware of their own biases, of their own privilege, and try to take distance from that if they want equity. Because I find that, you know, we intellectuals, we linguists, we like to see ourselves as being progressive, as being, you know, cool and progressive. But often it's when you dig down and look at actual actions, what's being done for real, then things come short. So, but I think if you show a look, you know, you say that you believe in universal grammar, that our languages have the same mechanisms for structure and are equally valid as object of study. Why do you favor this narrow set of languages and not others? See? So you have to push back.
Okay, thanks. I have many questions from the audience, but I would like to say that the inspiration coming from Haiti as well is a great inspiration I have for my work here in Brazil, for my research, because Haiti is the revolution, the first revolution to raise the needs for the abolition of slavery, for example, in Brazil. And I don't know if you know, but we had centuries ago of revolts or blacks and of, for example, trying to diminish this slavery systemic oppression in Brazil. And I think Haiti, it's like what Fanon said about language. Language is a kind of to hunt, to persecute, to go against Black people, because Black people are demanded to speak a kind of right or correct language. And as if we didn't have a language before this slavery or the colonialism, for example. But let me go to the questions I have here from the audience. Wellington da Silva Professor DeGraff, do you think the so-called argument of the Brazilian racial democracy, first of all, let me just introduce what is the Brazilian racial democracy? Okay, in Brazil, for us Blacks, there is something against our bodies in Brazil. That's the so-called Brazilian racial democracy. That was a movement which was said during Congress, during events or seminars, or, for example, all over the world about Brazil. But it was by physicians or scientists from Brazil, white scientists, who came to introduce this kind of myth of racial democracy, as if here in Brazil we undergo a kind of racial democracy. That's not the truth, because in Brazil you have, for example, numbers of people, Black people murdered at gunpoint that are scaring all the times our imagination, because they are going and keep going, and we don't have how to stop them. So it's the Brazilian racial democracy myth. And Wellington says, do you think the so-called argument of this myth, this is the Brazilian racial democracy, obliterates the exceptionalist and maybe racist view on the popular Brazilian Portuguese? So it's the popular Brazilian Portuguese, as said. It's the Portuguese spoken by the majority Brazilians that's ignored by linguists, the most linguists in Brazil. But do you think it's this myth that obliterates the exceptionalist and maybe racist view on the popular Portuguese Brazilian Portuguese? Sorry.
Well, that's a very complex question for me to answer. Yes. Not having looked in details at the history of Brazil and of Portuguese in Brazil, but I know one friend and colleague, Helena Mello, at UFMG, Minas Gerais, who's done work. She's done a thesis on Portuguese in Brazil, and she might be a good person to raise that question with. And when it comes to racial democracy, I smile because I remember very well my first trip to Brazil. Actually, I went to Brazil a couple of times, and one trip I took with my family, and my son then was quite young, and he noticed something which was striking, which is that as we were landing in I'm trying to remember where we landed, was it Sao Paulo? And he noticed that all the hostesses and the pilots, they were all white. And then he noticed that all the folks carrying the luggage, they were all Black. And he asked me, what's going on? Why all the Brazilians on the plane are white, but all the Brazilians on pushing the luggage, they're all Black? And so we had to have a deep position about race. And as you say, it's a myth, right? It's a myth. So I think, and given I saw that you have this sign about Maria Franco behind you.
Yeah, that's
so,
it.
Yeah, so obviously you more than anyone else will know that there's all this myth about equity, about democracy in Brazil, which are definitely not true, especially not now with their current president. So, but I would defer to someone who studied Portuguese in Brazil to answer that question.
Yes, Professor Salikoko Mufweni says that a great lecture. So I'm going to read this important comment. Unfortunately, even in polities, in countries, I think, where indigenous languages are used in education, albeit the lower level of formal education, the economic system disadvantages those languages. So it's like in Brazil, for example, let me just briefly say about Brazil, where they have the situation, and have some languages coming from the Bantu cultures in Africa that were erased in official policies, but they still exist and are being ignored, for example, in linguistic studies. But would you like to comment, Professor Saliko Komufeni's comment?
I'm not sure I totally understood the comment.
He's saying that even in countries where indigenous languages are used in education, it's not the case of Brazil, because in Brazil, these indigenous languages are not used in education. But he's speaking about the countries where indigenous languages are used in education, albeit the lower level of formal education, the economic system disadvantages those languages.
Okay. I see. So basically, I think his point then would be to make sure that as we use these languages in education, we also work to make sure that there is some outlet where folks who speak languages will not be penalized for not speaking the dominant language. And I totally agree with that. And I think that, so there are countries in Latin America, is it Bolivia, where there are some explicit rules to push civil servants to learn those indigenous languages. And basically, one would want to think that there should be some premiums, there should be some benefits given to the use of local languages. And in the case of Haiti, which I'm more familiar with, it's clear that those languages have economic values. For example, if you look at commercials in Haiti, billboards and radio commercials, most of them are in Creole. If you look at, in fact, I often get, when I speak to technocrats in the Ministry of Education, they often say, well, you know, the people who who can write Creole, who can read Creole, they can also read French or write French. So I don't think it's such an issue. I think written French is fine for them, because whoever can read and write can also read and write French. But the fact is that, and we have clear data on that, most written communication these days in Haiti on social media is in Creole, right? So it's clear that Creole is the one language that most Haitians are comfortable in. So in terms of economic rewards, it's clear that the country would do so much better if Creole was indeed integrated in all sectors of society. If at university, in companies, Creole was used, because it would allow employees and students to be much more productive, because that's a language in which they think and they function much more fluently. And it's not one or the other. Often my position is being caricatured as if it should only be Creole and not French. In fact, data from, I mentioned that school in Matenois, LKM, L'École Communautaire Matenois, in that school, the kids, they learn French as well. In fact, what you see is that they learn French much better, because they learn French from a strong position in the literacy, where they know how to write and read very well in Creole, and then they can learn French very well, you see? So it's not one versus the other. So in fact, even from that perspective, there's some economic benefit to promote the local language, because it allows you to then learn second languages much, much better and become much more functional in society, you see? So I think there are all these bottlenecks that are not real. They are mystifications. And I think that there should be a job of educating the public, educating the teachers, the parents, that in fact, Creole will not keep you in a ghetto. On the contrary, Creole will give you the means to be full citizens, and also to be able to learn French and English and Spanish, you see? And this is where I think we have to put pressure points on the government, on the Ministry of Education, to play its role in that kind of campaigning. Because on paper, the ministry understands it. And on paper, Creole is supposed to be part of the curricula, supposed to be used for in the first 5 grades, and then you introduce French later on. But in practice, the ministry is still pushing French as the primary language of instruction, and you can see it clearly on the websites. So I think this is where racism and white supremacy become very difficult to counter, because you have to work with, you have to dismantle all these beliefs, all these really they're results of self-hatred and racism that you have to get rid of, and let science speak for itself.
Okay, sorry, because people are demanding the correction here, because I said indigenous languages are not used in Brazil in various indigenous schools, but I meant official government schools, because official government schools are still teaching white languages, white languaging practices, right? So as Fanon analyzed about the case of Kreyòl in Martinique, the Indian tiles, we have some problems coming from the whites because they are defining what is the language, right? At the same time, they are defining that we have to work as translators to maintain a submissive status of our people. But we are not here for that. Of course, we are stopping, interrupting this kind of thing. And in your work, you analyze this kind of whiteness working on positing more and more this whiteness and anti-Black ideologies in linguistics, for example. When you just keep going in your scholarship, bringing us the sense of Black Lives Matter. I think it's a nice thing when you teach us the senses, the meanings of Black Lives Matter for us in Latin America is not brought from the United States, but from the Haiti culture and revolution. This is remarkable. Okay, many thanks. And I would like to ask you, Fanon speaks about Petit Negre. That's a kind of what you say about pidgin, because Petit Negre, it's a kind of cognitive theory of accounting for what is the language. Even in the United States, cognitive linguistics continues to say about evolution of languages. For example, they do not speak about evolution, but they speak about linguistic change. What do you think, how do you feel about this cognitive or psychological arguments coming from linguistics?
I think I lost you a bit, Gabriel. So can you summarize the argument for me?
Yes, well, okay, I'm speaking about the Petit Negre, that I think it's so comparable with this theorization coming from cognitive linguistics, for example. What do you think about cognitive linguistics according to this argument of evolutionary evolution of language, for example? Because they continue, linguists who work with cognitive linguistics continue to categorize this language like a piece of evolution of languages, even in the United States, for example.
Well, you used the term Petit Negre, right? Petit Negre is a term that was introduced in the, I think, in the late 19th, early 20th century. If Mufwene is still here, he probably could tell us more about this. But it was also called Français tirailleur. It was a kind of French that was used in countries like Senegal, in military barracks, and it was based on a set of misconceptions about the kind of French that the Africans could speak. And there's been lots of studies, in fact, showing that maybe that variety never really existed, except in the minds of certain French that were quite racist and who assumed that the Africans could not learn normal, full-fledged French. So therefore, they were reducing. It's like, the Tarzan story, right? Me, Tarzan, you, Jane. Like the idea is that Africans could not speak English, and therefore you have to speak to them in a very telegraphic fashion. And that's an extreme kind of pidgin that. So I mentioned in the context of Maniga, President Maniga would say that, well, in the case of Haiti, we cannot use Haitian Creole in schools and in administration because it's a language that derives from Petit Negre, and that makes it extremely reduced structurally, and therefore it's like a language in infancy. So forget about Creole. Let's just use French. We should be proud of, French is ours. We took it in the war against the French. So that was the use of Petit Negre that I made of in my presentation. And I don't know what cognitive linguistics would have to say about this kind of French. For me, that very notion is an extremely racist one. The idea that Africans, all they could speak of French is that variety called Petit Nègre, and even the name itself, is so full with racist ideology in it. And I was struck that an intellectual like historian Leslie Manigat, who many Haitians revere as the paragon of excellence, I was shocked that he used that definition for Haitian Creole. But it was clear that that his belief echoed that of linguists who still promote the view that Creole languages emerge from pidgins. In fact, I show you a quote where there is that the first children of pidgin speakers, they would take that pidgin and turn it into Creole. There is that Creole emerged from this tabula rasa, from the scrap of a pidgin that's really a reduced form of language. It's almost non-language, you see. So that's what I take issue with, this particular view of Creole formation that you find in the beliefs of many intellectuals, including in Haiti, who still believe that a national language is a language in infancy. In fact, I've had debates with an intellectual who still wants to convince me that, look, Creole is not yet a language. It's a reduced language. It's in infancy. It's still developing. And that's what in fact, the work that we've been doing at MIT-Haiti, the work by Paul Belloni in physics, the work of Heinz Miller that we translate in Creole in mathematics, my own work when I write in Creole, it all shows that all these views about Creole languages, they are baseless. They're empirically baseless because the language has the same apparatus as any other language to express abstract concepts, to have opaque lexicalizations, all kinds of features that many linguists believe are not to be found in Creole. In fact, I've done a few papers showing that all these beliefs are empirically wrong. So I don't know what cognitive linguists would say about these pidgin varieties, so I cannot really opine, but I know that these beliefs of Creole coming from pidgin, they're again a result of the structuring force of white supremacy in linguistics. And my colleague Mufwene has done lots of work looking at that, and I've done also lots of work looking at the history of these claims and showing that they don't hold water.
Okay. So I have to try to bring the context of this question as well, because it's speaking about the biased or ethnically, racially correction of
Gabriel, I have a suggestion. Gabriel,
for example, and is asking about. Okay, like that.
I have a suggestion. Could you if you could cut and paste? Yes, could you cut and paste the question? I can hear you. Could you cut and paste the question in the chat box? Is that possible? Hello?
Sorry. Can you hear you?
I can hear you, yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Hello?
Yes?
Okay, that's right. So, okay. The question is, do you think this biased or ethnically, racially correction of Kreyòl may be seen as having a similar nature of the correction, for example, of some stigmatized linguistic variety within a national language? For example, when people say you speak a wrong English, you don't speak a proper English, or you don't speak a proper Portuguese. So do you think it can be comparable with this?
Absolutely. In fact, I agree that the kind of reactions we see against Haitian Creole, for example, or against Jamaican Creole in Jamaica, I think it falls in the same pattern as what you see in the US against various varieties of of English. And in fact, that's one thing that you can see in the paper by Rickford and King, looking at attitudes towards AAE in the court situation. And it shows that they show that you find similar patterns in other court cases where speakers of different stigmatized varieties, say in Europe, for example, were taken to be less reliable, and how speaking a particular dialect would automatically make you a less reliable witness on the stand in front of a judge. Yes, so it's just that in the case of Haiti, the stigmas are even more spectacular. You see, because and not only they're even more spectacular, but the kind of excuses that you find, say for example, in the US, one could say, well, you know, AAE is just a variety of English, so why bother? But in the case of Haiti, it's clear that structurally Haitian Creole is not a variety of French, right? That you cannot say that Haitian Creole is just a kind of French, unless you were to redefine what it means to be a kind of French. And yet, that's a language that everyone speaks, and you still have this kind of prejudices against the national language, although you know it's in the law, it's national, it's official, it has an academy, it has a literature, it has a whole culture behind it. You have an amazing, beautiful text in Creole, in poetry, in novels. So what's striking is that those stigmas survive in spite of all evidence that this is a full-fledged language. You see, and this is why we have to go beyond linguistics and understand the politics of these, what Foucault called this regime of truth. You have to understand the mechanics of internalized racism. You know, why is it that even folks, brilliant intellectuals who speak Creole, why do they put it down, although they have all the means to know better? You see, and this is where Fanon's work becomes very important, or Pierre Bourdieu's work, or Ngogewa Thiongo work, or in the case of Haiti, you know, anthropologists like Jean-Price Mars, you know, to help us understand the roots of this internalized racism against our own identity, against our own language. You see, so definitely, I would put all these cases of linguistic discrimination. I think they belong in the same box, except that you know there are differences, but it's the same pattern of domination where. Because we can still say things about language that we won't say about race, about gender. It's polite to say, well, so and so speaks broken English, or so and so doesn't speak properly. It's okay to say that. Many men say, well, I'm trying to help them out by saying that. You see, and that's why language is such an efficient tool for domination, you know, because it's transparent.
Yeah, but that was my question. It's not the case for us to fight against the concept of the conception of national language that we used to use in our works. For example, when we are going to speak about English or Portuguese, for example.
Can you clarify that a bit? Can you clarify a bit?
Yeah, it's not the case for us to fight against the conception of national language, for example, that we will continue to use a conception of national language when we are working, for example, on linguistics.
And by doing so, you remove the possibility of variation. Is that the issue, that you don't? By using this concept of national language, you don't take into account that there are varieties within that national language that deserve attention, that deserve careful study. Okay, yeah.
Yes. Okay, two more questions. Okay, two more questions. One from Antonio Lafuria, who's asking, have Haitian linguists contributed to the publication of masters and doctoral dissertations in Creole? What's the Haitian Academy support for this kind of possibility?
Well, that's a very complex question, which there's probably enough time to go into it. But in academia, so in Haiti, we have on the applied linguistics faculty, and I know the dean of that faculty very well, Renaud Gauvin, who's a professor of linguistics. And we know Professor Gauvin has been doing lots of work pushing the use of Creole at university in its as part of its mandate as the dean of the applied linguistics faculty. But again, that faculty is part of a larger ecosystem where there is still resistance against the use of Creole. Now, the fact is that in practice, in classrooms, if you go to a Haitian typical classroom, you'll find teachers often using Creole because that's what you need to use when you want the students to understand what you're teaching. There's no way around that. If you really want, if you're doing math, you want your students to understand the math, you have to use Creole. Where there is a bottleneck, and it's totally artificial, is in written materials, right? So most materials that are written for the use of students, it's in French, you see. So it creates this dichotomy where the understanding is in Creole, but then when you have to take exams and you have to produce text, you have to do it in French, and this is what has to give, right? That's what has to give. Now, you asked about the academy. So yes, there is an academy, and as you mentioned in the introduction, I'm a founding member of it. But my relationship with the academy has been very fraught because of, well, the simple fact is that the academy as a state office, it's a state institution, it's part of an ecosystem where there are certain traditions that might not be so, I would say, pro-scientific. So there are still issues that have to be worked out in order for linguistics to be used in a very constructive fashion as part of the work of the academy. And that hasn't happened yet. And because I'm a linguist, that has created complex difficulties between myself and the academy. So I'll leave it at that because that's another topic. But I believe that the academy itself, the mission is very noble. And the mission is to promote the use of Creole throughout Haitian society. And as it turns out, there are many members of the academy that hold key positions in Haitian society. For example, one of the founding members, Fritz Desommes, is also the rector, the president of the State University. So as such, Fritz Desommes has enormous power in being able to usher the systematic use of Creole at the level of the university. But this hasn't happened yet. Again, because of the complex situation of Haiti, where French holds still so much premium, even within circles that are supposed to be progressive. So, but I'm still hopeful that given that we have someone like Fritz Desommes, who's both a member of the academy, but also the president of the university, I'm hoping that his role as an academician of Creole will eventually translate into its work as part of the university to introduce Creole at all levels of the system there. So, but that remains to be seen. But I'm hopeful.
Okay. Now, Nandy Sims, did you interview parents as well in your work? Will it be hard making changes to the curriculum if the parents aren't on board, or if they have strong ideology supporting the use of French over Creole?
Yes, that's a great question. So there's been lots of theses. Well, I didn't say lots, but there's been quite a few theses written about the attitudes of parents, of teachers around Creole. And I think that Nandy has a great point, which is that we have to bring parents on board. And actually the Matenois school, L'École Matenois, and I want to again give kudos to the founders, Abner Sauveur and Chris Lowe. They have done very important work with the community there, showing the importance of using Creole for education. And their work actually gives us a model of what can be done with parents, because basically parents want their kids to succeed, right? That's what they want. They want their kids to succeed, and they've made to believe that French is what they need to succeed. But if they can see actual results where the kids learn in Creole and also can learn French and succeed learning French as well, then I think that then they can be more open to the use of Creole. But then, as a key point is that parents have to be part of this movement for change. And I would recommend so then they could look at the work of L'École Communautaire Matinois, and I want to give big thanks to the team there for the collaboration with MIT-Haiti.
Okay. Professor, thank you for your presence here, for accepting the invitation from Abralin. I think we always stand in solidarity with Black people like us in Brazil, in Haiti, in Latin America, in the Caribbean. I said Latin America, but I mean Haiti. Haiti is the place for us, like the inspiration of revolution. We demand more and more from Haiti. So it's a pleasure for me to be here with you. And I think we should all stand with solidarity. So calling on linguists or associations to bring more Black scholars to speak about the most diverse themes, to, of course, make valuable this theme of Black Lives Matter really matter in our society. Thank you so much. Thank you, Miguel, for the invitation. I think it's the conversation. It's a way to change. You have to change, of course, the world together. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for Abralin for this amazing work that you all are doing to make English accessible, to all during this difficult period. And then I'm going to read the chat to see what questions were there, and I hope I can answer the other questions directly in the chat. So thank you very much.
Yes, these questions are from the chat, but there are, of course, there are other demands I mentioned earlier. So these are the questions from the chat. I brought all the questions I could check on the chat. But if you wanna answer one more question, I have one more question for you from the audience. Because I don't know if you're tired, but I have one more question from Tatiana Klein.
Yes.
I'll say amazing work. Does the curriculum in Haiti give elementary and secondary students the opportunity to learn about the Haitian language in terms of its history and position in different levels of society?
Wow, that's a great question. That's a great question. So, as far as I know, not enough of that is done in the Haitian school system, but that it would be great to do that. In fact, what you see, and this is again something to try to change, is that the teaching of Creole in the schools, so as far as I can tell, given my own research, is very exam driven. So because there are these exams that now the kids have to take on Creole writing, on Creole grammar, the teaching is done around these questions, and I find that they don't go far enough in having the kids really appreciate and understand the mechanics of the language, but also to use it in other domains. In fact, I know cases where the same schools where the kids are being taught how to write in Creole, they are also punished for using Creole in the other classes. So it's okay to use Creole in the class where you learn how to write Creole, but then if you do physics or if you do math, then you cannot use Creole in those other classes, which it's so counterproductive. In fact, it's telling the child, look, Creole, you just need enough of it to take the exam, but outside of that, what you need is French, right? So again, it's not helping the child not only in the learning, but also in the way they create their identity as Creole speakers. They see Creole as something which is of much lesser value than French. But that gives you an idea that maybe that's on the platform we should think of such material that would help the students better understand the history and the structure of Haitian Creole and what it means for them as Haitians. So that's a good idea. And thank you, Tatiana, for sharing the pictures of your Black Lives Matter signs in your classrooms. Thank you.
Okay. Mateus Silveira. And how do you see the French speaking scene? Does Haiti have an important role in this union? Mateus da Silveira. Did you understand my question?
No. Say it again.
Okay. Okay. How do you see the French speaking scene? I think it means the French speaking moment, for example, the imagery of French all over the world. Does Haiti have an important role to this kind of understanding of French culture, Francophone culture?
Well, what I can say there is that from the 18th century, 19th century onward, Haitian intellectuals have produced so much literature in French that yes, so Haiti has played a major role in the context of literature in the French language, and I could give some references. So there is my colleague Fouina Léger. There is also my other colleague Marlène Do, who've done lots of work looking at the production of Haitian writers in the French language and how that plays in the general landscape of literature in French. But I'm not myself an expert in that field.
Okay. What about Fanon once said about the way whites try to speak Petit Negre when they speak with Black people from Martinique, for example. And he said that whites cannot interpret what's the preference, for example, coming from the Black people from Martinique, or for example, Black people from the colonies. How do you think about this attitude coming from the whites when they try to say specific language is our language? Because sometimes we configure national languages, or we speak our own language, such as the Kreyòl. How do you feel when whites are trying to categorize a specific language to Blacks, for example?
Well, that's a problem, right? If you look at the history of Creole studies, that's exactly how we've arrived to this state of the art, this sort of claims that excluded Creole languages from the family of normal, so to speak, genetic languages, right? The idea was that, and if you look at the literature on Creoles in the 19th century, so the French and other European linguists and anthropologists, they were very clear that the Africans in the Caribbean could not speak anything like French or English or Spanish or Dutch. So they had to speak something that was radically different, right? And the idea was that, as a philosopher put it back then, so languages are to mark the genius of nations. So French was for the French people, and Africans could not speak French. And I think this sort of belief is at the root of many of these dogmas in Creole studies about how to classify Creole languages. Okay. So yeah, so I would suggest. So I wrote this paper back in 2005 about linguists' most dangerous fallacy, and it's exactly about that, about the kind of beliefs that drove early Creolists in the 19th century to not be able to analyze, say, Haitian Creole as a normal language. It was because it was, they were starting from the belief that these were not, quote unquote, normal people. Therefore, they couldn't speak normal languages. You see, and this has left us with the myths that we're still dealing with today, which are basically colonial myths that we still have to get rid of.
Okay, thank you so much. I brought you the question from the audience.
That's great. I think
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that I can stay here with you, and that this moment can happen just finally, because this event is a great event. Joint event with many associations, and I think your presence here is not about only a Black presence, but your presence is a Black presence demanding racial justice. So thank you so much, because language has to do with racial justice. Thank you for accepting the invitation again from Abralin, Professor DeGraff.
Thank you. Thank you to both you, Gabriel, and to Miguel. And I think I like what you said at the end. Indeed, language and linguistics have to be part of racial justice. I think you said it so eloquently, and I think that as the last word for this very nice
yes
meeting. Thank you very much, Gabriel.
Good afternoon,